Here are the 10 fastest 70s muscle cars over the quarter mile. Number 10, 1970 Ford Torino Cobra. Quarter mile time, 13.99 seconds. Among Ford muscle cars, the Mustang is generally considered to rule the performance roost, but the Fairlane-based Torino was another fast offering during its time on the market. Motor Trend named the Torino Cobra its car of the year for 1970, and that's for good reason. While the Ford looked unassuming on the outside, it was a born supercar slayer under the hood. Powering the was a 429 cubic inch 385 series big block V8, producing 360 horsepower in Thunderjet guise, 370 horsepower in Cobra jet guise, and 375 horsepower if you checked the drag pack option and went for the Super Cobra jet. With a 4-speed manual transmission and a set of 3.91 gears, Motor Trend achieved a 13.99 ET at 101 mile per hour in a middling Cobra jet during a roundup of Ford's 1970 Torino models. As if that wasn't impressive enough, 60 mile per hour came in a mere 5.8 seconds. Number 9, 1971 Ford Mustang Boss 351, 13.8 seconds. Although Ford fielded a number of fast, large displacement Mustangs through the 1960s and early 1970s, like the Cobra Jet and the Boss 429, official tests for those cars sometimes yielded subpar results. Because Motor Trend can lay claim to an impressive 13.8-second quarter-mile time for the stock 1971 Boss 351, we've given it our 9th spot on the fastest 1970 muscle cars. Under the hood, it came with a heavily modified Cleveland V8 engine, producing 330 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque. To accomplish such a feat, Ford fitted the engine with high-flowing 4V heads, an 11.7-to-1 compression ratio, aluminum pistons, and forged rods. As if that wasn't enough, Autolite's 4300D carb was made specifically for the Boss. (1971) Corvette 454, LS6, 13.72 seconds. Just as the LS6 454 was coming into its heyday, the onset of the malaise era meant that Chevrolet had to move away from the hallowed big block in cars like its iconic Corvette. As such, many enthusiasts consider the 1971 Corvette 454 LS6 to be among the last examples of the Golden Age, and the cars themselves are few and far between. Just 188 examples rolled off the line that year. Like a lot of high-performance machines from this era, the Corvette on this list didn't just sit pretty, it got thoroughly wrung out by the folks at CarCraft magazine. In its bone stock form, they managed a quarter-mile time of 13.72 seconds at just over 102 miles per hour. But they didn't stop there. After upgrading it with a set of 456-to-1 gears, Hedman headers, Thrush side pipes, Coney shocks, a Hayden oil cooler, Formula One Superstock tires mounted on 8.5-inch steel wheels, and topping off the tank with premium fuel, they managed to shave more than a full second off the time. With those mods, the Corvette ripped through the quarter mile in just 12.64 seconds at a blazing 114 miles per hour. That's seriously impressive performance, especially considering it all came from tuning an already potent stock setup. Number 7, 1970 Dodge Challenger RT440 6-pack, 13.62 seconds. As you'll see throughout the rest of this list, Mopar muscle plays a major role whenever acceleration is the focus. And while the 1970 Challenger 440 6-pack might trail just slightly behind the quickest of the bunch, it's still a serious performer. In fact, it blasted through the quarter mile in just 13.62 seconds at 104 miles per hour. That's according to CarCraft, which tested the car in its 1969 issue, just ahead of the Challenger's official release. The heart of this beast was a 440 cubic inch V8, topped with 3 two-barrel carburetors and a 10.5-to-1 compression ratio. That setup cranked out 390 horsepower and a monstrous 490 pound-feet of torque. Sure, that's about 35 horsepower less than the legendary 426 Hemi, but many enthusiasts found the 6-pack to be the more street-friendly of the two. Plus, it was a lot easier to come by. Dodge built 1,640 standard Challenger 446-pack RTs for the 1970 model year, compared to only about 287 Hemi-powered versions. Number 6, 1970 Plymouth Superbird, 13.5 seconds. Plymouth built the Superbird with one goal in mind, convincing Richard Petty to return to their team after a stint with Ford. And in the process, they ended up creating one of the most memorable and impressive performance cars of the era. While the Superbird absolutely made waves in NASCAR, it also proved itself as a serious machine on the street. To transform the base Roadrunner into something more aerodynamic, Plymouth gave it a long, sloped nose cone and an unmistakable rear wing that stood a towering 23 inches high. The design took clear inspiration from the Dodge Charger Daytona, which had debuted the year before in 1969. But Plymouth's designers weren't content with simply copying. They wanted the Superbird to look sleeker and more stylish. So despite what the wind tunnel had to say, they modified the nose and angled the rear more sharply, ultimately hurting the car's aerodynamic efficiency. In fact, period tests showed the Superbird was actually a bit slower than the Dodge, anywhere from 1 to 3 miles per hour slower, even with everything else being equal. Buick GS455 Stage 1, 13.38 seconds. The GS455 Stage 1 is one of the most underrated muscle cars of its time, when Buick rolled out the GSX shortly after. With its bold, attention-grabbing looks, they were clearly trying to shake off the brand's understated image. But even the more subtle GS455 was nothing to overlook. In fact, back in 1969, Motor Trend tested the car and ran the quarter mile in just 13.38 seconds at 105 miles per hour. That blistering run earned it the title of the quickest American production muscle car for 1970. Now, like many automakers of that era, Buick likely played down the car's true potential, mostly to keep insurance companies at bay. Officially, the Stage 1 was rated at 360 horsepower and 510 pound-feet of torque, which was only a 10 horsepower bump over the standard 455. But in reality, The Stage 1 was probably making 400 horsepower or more. That would certainly explain how it managed to rip from 0 to 60 in just 6 seconds flat and hit a top speed of around 115 miles per hour. Quietly powerful, brutally quick, and built with that signature Buick refinement, the GS 455 Stage 1 was, and still is, a force to be reckoned with.
Ball there.
1970 Plymouth Roadrunner 426, 13.34 seconds. Plymouth's Roadrunner was a massive hit in its heyday, right behind the Chevrolet Chevel in popularity, and it managed to sell over 80,000 units in 1969 alone. Sure, its connection to the Warner Brothers cartoon gave it a playful edge, especially with features like the switch-activated air grabber hood scoop and that unforgettable comical purple beep-beep horn.
Beep, beep.
But this Mopar machine was more than just a gimmick. The Roadrunner had serious muscle. True to its name, it could absolutely tear up the pavement. In the December 1969 issue of Superstock magazine, testers pitted the Roadrunner 426 Hemi against the 446 pack. The result? The Hemi-powered Roadrunner ripped through the quarter mile in just 13.34 seconds at 107.5 miles per hour. Like the rest of Mopar's Hemi legends, this Roadrunner came with an official rating of 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque. That was more than enough to launch it from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds, which for its time was downright blistering.
This is Give me a good rev. I'll take that.
Number 3, 1970 Chevrolet Chevel SS454, 13.12 seconds. Today, the Chevrolet Chevel SS454 stands as a symbol of the golden age of American muscle cars, a reputation it earned the hard way, with brutal straight-line speed and a design that still turns heads decades later. Under the hood of the legendary LS6 sat a beast of an engine, officially rated at 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, making for some of the quickest 0 to 60 runs of its era. But raw numbers don't tell the whole story. This car had the total package. It looked every bit as aggressive as it drove. Big block power, aggressive styling, and that unmistakable growl from the exhaust made the Chevel SS a dream car for gearheads everywhere. Now, when it comes to performance figures, Hot Rod clocked the Chevel running the quarter mile in 13.44 seconds. Pretty impressive, right? But it gets better. CarCraft tested another LS6 and reported an even faster time, 13.12 seconds at 107.01 miles per hour. The difference? Gearing and traction. As Hot Rod explained, CarCraft's car was running 355 gears, while theirs had 410 gears, which technically should have been quicker. But thanks to better off-the-line traction, CarCraft posted the faster ET. Either way, the Chevel SS454 was a monster at the drag strip and remains one of the most celebrated American muscle cars ever built. 1970 Dodge Challenger RTSE 426. 13.1 seconds. If you're chasing one of the purest examples of old-school Hemi-powered muscle, it's hard to top the 1970 Dodge Challenger RT. While the iconic Cuda gets most of the spotlight these days, the Hemi-equipped Challengers are actually the rarer find. Dodge cranked out about 13,688 Challenger RT hardtop coupes that year, but only 287 of them came straight from the factory with the legendary 426 cubic inch Hemi under the hood, officially rated at 425 horsepower. With a monster 490 pound-feet of torque on tap, Carcraft managed to rip through the quarter mile in 13.10 seconds at 107 miles per hour. And that was in a Challenger RT fitted with a 4-speed manual and aggressive 410 gears. That performance essentially matches the times posted by the Hemi Cuda. Still, we gave the slight nod to the Plymouth thanks to its quicker 0 to 60 sprint. But make no mistake, the Challenger RT Hemi is every bit the fire-breathing street machine you'd expect from Dodge in its muscle car prime. Number 1, 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. Quarter-mile time, 13.1 seconds. Taking the number 1 spot on our list is the legendary 1970 Hemi Cuda, a car that's as iconic as it is powerful. Carcraft magazine clocked this beast running the quarter mile in a blistering 13.10 seconds at 107 miles per hour, and honestly, that kind of performance lives up to everything the Plymouth nameplate has come to represent. At the heart of it all was the mighty 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, cranking out a factory-rated 425 horsepower and a massive 490 pound-feet of torque. That was more than enough to rocket the Cuda from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds. Not bad at all for a street-legal car on factory tires back in 1970. But the Hemi Cuda wasn't just about raw power, it had the looks to match. Its wide, aggressive stance was paired with razor-sharp body lines and a deep, menacing front grille. A dual-scooped hood sat up front, while a blacked-out tail panel wrapped things up in the back. And to make sure it turned heads wherever it went, Plymouth offered it in eye-popping colors like lime light, rally red, and in violet. Only 652 Hemi Cudas were built for 1970, making it not just a muscle car icon, but a rare one, too.